Good afternoon, all. Is the mic? Can you hear me all? No? No? All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our session today.
I can hear you.
You might need to get closer.
Oh. Hello. Is it good now? All right, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us here today. We are here to talk about integrating Pattern Lab with Drupal 8. A little bit introduction about ourselves. My name is Roshanad Dakota. I'm a Drupal developer. I have an undergraduate degree from George Mason University on a computer science. I've been with Booz Allen since September 2018 and doing the web development for the past 10 years and then Drupal development for about 4 years. My journey for the Drupal development begins I took one training here at a Drupal GovCon and then I fell in love with it, and I would like to take this opportunity and thank you Drupal GovCon for giving us this opportunity. And any questions regarding anything or any after this, you can reach out to me at my email dakotaroshana@bahat.com or tweet me at my first name and last name squeezed together.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin McCloskey. I am also a Drupal developer for the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the web development team, alongside Roshana, which from now on, if we refer to the Institute, we're going to be referring to it as NIAD because otherwise it's just a mouthful. I graduated from the University of Maryland, College Park with a degree in computer science in 2016. Go Terps. I've been a developer with Booz Allen Hamilton for a little over 2 years now. In terms of my Drupal and Pattern Lab expertise, I'd say I'm finishing up my rookie season, but I've learned an immense amount in a very short period of time. So I'm very excited and grateful to be here today to share my experiences with you all. So thank you for having me and thank you for listening. Oh, and one other thing, before we get started, our presentation is geared a little bit more towards Drupal developers in the sense that throughout this presentation we're going to be showing some code snippets, some contents of some files, a little bit of what Drupal looks like behind the scenes. But if you're not working with PHP or HTML or Twig or configuring Drupal every day, fear not. I think this is still an excellent opportunity to learn about Pattern Lab and what it has to offer. So this is our Rockstar development team. We're currently working very, very hard on upgrading NIAD's public-facing website from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. And so we're taking advantage of the upgrade by introducing Pattern Lab into our project as a means of enhancing our UI capabilities. And I'd like to give just a quick shout out to the gentleman he's actually in between Roshana and myself in this photo. That's Jake Kokomo. He's our UI UX designer / developer. And obviously throughout this talk we're going to be discussing a lot about Pattern Lab and design and patterns and our front end. And he's really the one that's in the Pattern Lab trenches making a lot of that front end magic happen and making the lives of the Drupal developers much, much easier. So shout out to him.
Before we begin with our presentation today, we'll just like to know a little bit about our audience. How many of you have worked with Pattern Lab before? That's nice.
Okay.
Any question?
Is anyone in the process of trying to implement Pattern Lab into their project? Okay, it's actually half now.
Hopefully this will be informative session. We'll start with our today's itinerary. We'll discuss a little bit about what is Pattern Lab and atomic design with Pattern Lab, benefits of using Pattern Lab, and some logistic implementing Pattern Lab with Drupal 8. We'll go with the Pattern Lab workflow, and we'll share some lesson learns, like what we learned in our process of this Pattern Lab, integrating Pattern Lab with Drupal 8. And lastly, we have one demo that recaps everything. What is Pattern Lab? Pattern Lab is a static site generator used to build and paste together UI components. It's actually created by Brad Frost. The Pattern Lab atomic design concept is like breaking the website into smaller components, and then from that smaller components you just keep on building you grow building your website until you reach the full complete website. Like for example, there are 5 stages of the hierarchy in our pattern hierarchy of atoms, molecule, organism, templates, and phrases. Breaking down common patterns into smaller component, and whenever combined, making larger component. So the idea behind like thinking small from the starting and then growing from there. Once we decided like we're gonna go our project with the Pattern Lab, like we looked into our whole NIAD website and decided like atoms, which on atoms like text areas, buttons, icons, headings are the atoms on our website, and molecules are like examples of molecules, site branding, menu tabs, search, etc. And then organism, header, footer, side rails, and so on. And then templates, grid determining layout of the components, and pages is the fully formed pages.
So there are a lot of benefits to using Pattern Lab, and we've put together a handful in there that we experienced firsthand. So although the Pattern Lab is a static site generator, it's designed to work with dynamic data. So for example, instead of feeding a pattern the exact text you wish for it to see for every single pattern you want rendered on your site, instead you're able to pass it variables so that based on the logic established behind the scenes, things will change. When working with content management systems like Drupal 8, this saves so much time when having to display the immense amount of fields that make up our different content types. Pattern Lab is also tool agnostic. This is probably my favorite part about Pattern Lab, is that it doesn't force any tools or libraries onto your project. The base installment of Pattern Lab is built to work out of the box. And on the flip side, it also doesn't restrict you with what you want to use. So, maybe you like working with jQuery, maybe you want to style with Sass, maybe you need an NPM package or two. Your implementation is entirely up to you. Pattern Lab's modular and organized. In our setup, we have every pattern is broken down and given its own folder. So within that folder, you find the pattern. We also find a style sheet for all the styling related to just that one pattern. And going one level above, each pattern folder is contained within another folder based on its component level. So like Roshana was saying, we separate atoms, are separated from molecules, are separated from organisms. It makes things really nice and organized and easy to find. And it also guarantees that we only have to change a pattern in one place and it's going to persist throughout the entire site. Seamless integration. So for the Drupal developers that are out there that are actually going to have to integrate Pattern Lab into your Drupal theme, I have good news. There's actually a Drupal specific edition of Pattern Lab that is built to work with PHP, Twig, and has Drupal specific plugins pre-installed. And if you don't want those plugins pre-installed, there's just a Twig edition. I think that's actually what we did, and then we added onto it. And lastly, Pattern Lab's extensible. So on top of those plugins that I just mentioned that are Drupal specific, there are a number of other plugins. There's also a very active community around Pattern Lab that's continuously improving the product. And Pattern Lab is pretty generous in terms of how it lets you structure your project, and it has pretty loose naming conventions. You can get as crazy as you want. So if you're the kind of person that likes to go and base your project structure on recommended best practices, you can also download what they call starter kits with your addition. So with the starter kits, you're going to get a baseline, example assets, and patterns to help you get off the ground. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at Pattern Lab at a higher level, we're actually going to go into what goes into integrating Pattern Lab into your Drupal theme. So, like we said, we definitely recommend either downloading the Twig template or the Twig edition of Pattern Lab or the Drupal edition. But once you have your installment downloaded, we recommend that you place the contents of that folder inside of the main Drupal theme folder. This is the same folder where you're going to find things like your .theme file and your Drupal theme templates. And you may have noticed in the leftmost graphic, we've put asterisks next to two YAML files. We have a theme.info and theme.libraries.yaml file. And when I say theme, that's just like the name of your theme. Obviously ours is naiad_Drupal_theme, but you would have to replace that with yours. But the reason we highlight these two now is because of probably the two most important files when it comes to configuring and making that connection between Pattern Lab and Drupal 8. And so once we have Pattern Lab dropped into our theme, we have, moving on to the right graphic, we have all of the components that make up our Pattern Lab installation, most notably the source folder. So inside the source folder, we have all of the key UI components that we need to build out our site. So like we had mentioned, this is where we actually store our patterns, and we have it broken down from atoms and molecules to organisms. We also have a folder dedicated specifically to global styling. So as I mentioned, each pattern contains its own SAS file, in our case, that pertains to the styling of that one pattern. But if we have multiple patterns that need some global styling, that's where we keep that. We also have a JavaScript file, so for any scripts that need to get run in the background, that's all contained within here too. For example, our team takes advantage of jQuery to do some DOM manipulation and to provide some functionality that's kind of difficult to do with vanilla Twig files. So all of that is stored there. Okay, good. I was worried that would be too dark. So we're circling back now to these two YAML files that I mentioned earlier. Once Pattern Lab is dropped into your Drupal 8 theme, we need to tell Drupal where exactly to look for those assets. So we'll start with the first one, the theme.info.yaml file. We need to establish our component libraries. Our component libraries are essentially just the paths to the individual component levels. So here we really only care about our atoms, molecules, and organisms. Maybe asking about templates, but our templates are essentially just the Drupal templates found in the main theme. And in the next file, the theme.libraries.yaml file, this is where we establish where's our global styling, where's our global scripts, and so we're just pointing to that CS and the JavaScript file I showed you guys earlier.
So we have set up our Pattern Lab folder. We have done everything, and then the one of the challenging thing was like, since not the only one person was working on a pattern lab making component, we have a developers like we wanted to participate. So we came up with this naming convention, like it's sort of from the BEM, block, element, and modifier. So all our pattern folders name pattern starting with type of elements. If it's a block, we have a block, blocks, and then block name of the separate words with hyphen. And pattern structure, we have every component, we have a series of parameters defined at the top. Patterns should be wrapped in a div, block type, block, and nav, and modifier, like so on. Elements should begin with block modifier name first, then the element and the two underscore block, like for example, block dash dash card underscore title. With coming up this naming convention from the beginning, we were like very happy that there were no classes in the CSS, and then our project moved on so quickly. Everybody could participate. In this slide, we are going to talk about our pattern lab workflow. The goal here is, the task here is to create a NIAD offices, division, and centers. This is on our front page, which is just it's a view that's been pulling out, it's a query from the content type. And then our goal is to create there is a 3-step involved in creating this on the Drupal side. First step, pattern is created, and second step, we will create a view, and then the third step, we'll do the template override. So on the very first step, when pattern is created, like we have molecule. If you look at the right side of the card, there is an individual card which has images, title, and a byline. So this is one molecule. We're naming that as a block division card, and then inside that we have a demo folder, and then the pattern SAS file included, and then the pattern Twig file, which is underscore block division card master. So demo, inside demo folder, we have a dummy content to see all those text. So before previous slide, we said like we have a series of parameter defines at the top of each content, like components. Those are the series of parameter we defined, and then inside that, since we already have atoms, like just the image, we included that one in this pattern, passing that to include atoms, images, image default on that line number 11. And then we are checking like all the logic is also happening here, like if there is a byline, if it's there, then render that. If not, then we're checking this one. So once we have this molecule, we are going to the next phase, that's like organism, so next level. In this one, our goal is to now use that molecule and create this NIAD offices, division, and centers. So we again have like series of parameters defined at the top from line 1 to 3, and then within that we are including, we have a block views division content that is including our previous molecules, where all the overrides of the dummy data we are having on the demo file views division centers, that's pulling the data like title, byline, image source, and image alt tags. So we looked up it and it looks good. So we're ready for now to work on the Drupal side. So once, this is just an example of that demo file. Within that, we have passed the data like this, instead of having JSON or other ML. So now this is a very simple view. It's just 3 fields: division card image, which is an entity reference field, and title, and division card byline. We're checking filtering criteria, like it's a content type landing page, and then within the landing page it's a division. Type is division, and then we have certain sort order, like something one we're sorting out in that order. So very simple view, and then once we have these views, we placed it in our correct region, and now it's the last step for us is to template override. So here we are doing all the template overrides. We named it as a views, unformatted naiad, like we did the template override, and we're embedding the organism pattern that we had before, and like passing the title, just changing the naiad offices, division, and center, and then within that block, like I referred before, we're now ready to, instead of dummy data, we're getting data from the Drupal, and then passing that in our title, block, division card, title, byline, image, source, all. And then at the end product, we'll have the same view picture in the pattern lab, and we have the same in the Drupal site.
So now that Roshana's going through the basic workflow that we go through every single day, pretty much, we've selected a few very common patterns on our site that we'd like to share with you. And before I get into that, let me just take a moment to provide a little bit of context into what we're seeing on the screen. So the left-hand graphic is actually a screen grab from a static server that's generated by Pattern Lab, and that server essentially acts as a pattern catalog. I'm going to actually spin up that server during the demo, and so you guys get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. But as a developer, if I want to see all of the patterns available to me in the rendered form, I'm able to do so by spinning up this server, navigating to it locally, and once I've found the pattern that I wish to use, the server also provides me with code snippets in both Twig and HTML format that I'm essentially able to copy and paste into the Drupal theme file, or excuse me, Drupal theme template, and adjust the parameters according to my needs. So in this first one, this is a common pattern throughout our site used to display images. Underneath the image, we also have a styled credit and caption portion. This pattern is responsive, so based on the resizing of the window, the image is going to adjust accordingly. Next, we have a lot of search pages on our site. We have a lot of content to search through, so all of our search pages are powered by Solar Search. We're doing that to enhance our search capabilities, and because Pattern Lab is designed to work with dynamic data, we're able to use the same search bar for all of our pages. And not only does that have the benefit of reusability, but it also provides a consistent user experience across the site. And lastly, this is a very common pattern found on our site that's used to display paragraph data. So for those of you who've accepted the atomic design mindset, you might be able to tell that we're looking at a molecule made up of about 4 atoms, I would say. So we have the header, the actual body text, the read more information link, as well as the encapsulating box.
So during our process of Pattern Lab, we found out that not everything needs a pattern. We started going making pattern for everything first. And then some of the things like Drupal handles so easily, like if you are, we have a content last reviewed, and all it needs is in the front check mark. So we just override CSS. So we started getting those, feeling like okay, we're gonna do pattern lab, integrate with pattern lab, but everything needs a pattern? So that saves a lot of time. Like, so we did not make pattern for everything ahead. We started like we need a pattern for this one, and then started building that. So that one was the one of the helpful like thing, and then uniform approach.
Yeah, I can talk to that one. So we had kind of alluded to it earlier, and unfortunately this wasn't a lesson that we had to learn the hard way. We established this pretty early on, but we benefited from it greatly, and that's to establish a uniform approach to naming conventions and pattern labs. Like I said earlier, pattern lab is very generous with how it lets you structure the entire project, and it lets you get a lot with naming conventions, so things can get out of hand relatively quickly if you have a bunch of people who don't have an agreed upon approach, just putting in whatever they want, and yeah, that's actually all I have for now.
Yeah, and then the last, like as always, like other teams, knowledge sharing across the team was very crucial for us, and it still is. And we've been like all together learning these new tools and then sharing knowledges that really helps us keep on going. And those 5 developers of us, like, it's a good team.
All right, so now we're gonna move on to the demo portion of our talk today. Essentially what we're gonna be doing is inserting a pattern. It's actually one of the patterns we showed you earlier during the common patterns on our site section, and we're gonna be inserting that into one of our node templates. So I'm gonna get set up here just quick. So I'm going to start by spinning up that static pattern lab server that we talked about. Make that way bigger. Okay. All right, so I'm in my pattern lab folder now. I'm going to type in Gulp. If none of you have used or heard of Gulp, it's an awesome tool. We use it as our main build system. So it's not only spinning up this server, but it's also compiling all of our CSS and all of our JavaScript into one individual file. Well, they're in separate files, but okay. And so this is, every time I come here, I always think I'm looking at like a catalog, but we see everything from our buttons that each have different styles depending on where they are on the site. We have input boxes, which are actually for dates, calendars, everything down to our overall site color palette. So let me, okay. So once I've scrolled through our catalog and I found the pattern that we want to use, unfortunately I can't really expand this, but this is where we have the code snippets that is essentially just displaying this data down here. So I'm able to copy and paste this code into the template, or at least use it as a guideline. So moving on to the actual Drupal portion. Again, we work for the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, so one of our content types we have is disease, and I'll make this bigger because and we're going to take a look at one disease in particular. Take a look at asthma. And I'm actually going to show the content that makes up this node first. Okay, so here we're looking at the node edit page, and we see all of the metadata that makes up asthma. And if we scroll down, here we have a particular field that you can insert as many paragraph types as you want. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in this case. So each paragraph has a title field, some body text, as well as a link field that contains both the link and URL. So what we want to do is essentially, for each of these, we're going to create its own individual pattern. And right now, if we look at the view page, here's what all 4 of those blocks look like. We have one here, keep going down. And so we obviously want to make this look a little bit prettier, and we want to utilize Pattern Lab. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate down to the Pattern Lab folder, and then find that pattern that we just looked at inside of that folder. Set pattern. So each of these blocks is considered an organism, and if you can imagine, the entire block that surrounds them is considered an organism. So we're going to go down to that level, go to views, disease info cards, and in this demo folder we have essentially, this is where this pattern is being pulled from. So I know I can't expand it here, but this is exactly what you would find in here. So this gives us a great guide. If we don't even copy and paste it, we can at least see, okay, we need to pass in an array with however many objects with these particular parameters. So in the template, we're going to have 2 steps. One is we need to recreate this demo, or excuse me, this data, and we're going to need to embed the pattern. And I might as well just show this too. So like we said, this is the actual pattern we'll be embedding, and here's the SAS file. So this only contains styling information pertaining to that one pattern, and that's all held together in one folder. So now I'm going to move on to the actual disease template. So we're going to go back, we're going to go into our main Drupal theme folder, under templates, under our content types, we're going to find disease. And scroll down. So instead of just copying and pasting this code and trying to type all this out, I've simply just commented out what we're going to go through, but I'm going to go through it line by line. So currently, this unstyled text is being printed out right here. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that because we don't need it. And so let's go through briefly the logic of embedding, or of creating that data and then embedding that pattern. So first we want to check, is there any data actually even in that field? We have that field, but there could be no blocks, and if that's the case, we don't want to render it. We don't want to have just random white space. And then we want to establish an empty list and go through each of the blocks that are there and essentially extract that metadata out that we want to pass in. Oops. Once we have our 4 pieces of data for our individual blocks, we're going to create an object and give it those 4 values. And then lastly, before we actually embed that pattern, we're going to merge that object into our existing list. So for anyone who's not working with Twig or isn't familiar with what we're doing here, essentially we're just creating a big list of objects. Each object is going to have a title, a body, and a link. So we're just essentially recreating each one of these, but in their code version. And then lastly, we're going to pass in that list of cards into the pattern. So we looked at the demo folder, and it's a little bit long, but when you're able to dynamically create that content, the actual passing of the values becomes very, very small. And so I'm going to save that. I'm just going to double check for anything. I don't see any. And because we've already visited this page, Drupal is going to cache this file. And if we were just to refresh right here, we wouldn't see any style changes happen. So I'm going to quickly just clear the cache. That'll take about 30 to 45 seconds, and then we should see our rendered pattern here. But let me... take a minute to plug my IED. Visual Studio Code is awesome. All right, so now that the cache is rebuilt, let's see if that took effect. If not, we're gonna have to rebuild the cache just on the front end. So our implementation has a layer of varnish, and sometimes clearing the cache on the command line doesn't work, so usually clearing it on the UI does. So apologies. Fingers crossed. There we go. So there we go. We have our pattern that is nicely displaying all 4 of our blocks now. And
this is just the additional resources we put together. Like we have a pattern lab starter kit. If you want to learn more about atomic design by Badfirst, there is a link for that. And then website mentioned in this presentation was National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease and our boozallandrupal.org site. We have information again, like Kevin said, myself, like Our email address is there. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Any questions?
In the examples you were showing, you were using paragraphs, you were using views, but you were always using what appeared to be the fields as opposed to displays. Have you guys experimented at all using Pattern Lab with entity displays? So for example, creating a card display or a teaser display, that way you can reuse those displays for your various entities, whether it's a paragraph or
We have one that's coming up on our front page. We have a paragraph type that's we're trying to figure out.
use the
Yeah,
displays.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll just, you won't have as many template overrides if you go that route, because you can then create a pattern for your paragraph type of it.
Yeah, we do have one for the, not many of our site has a paragraph types. That's why the example we showed.
Okay.
Yeah, but only particular one has the paragraph types, that's all. And we do have a style as a display. Thank you.
I don't know if it's part of the scope of the presentation, but if you're using version control, do you ignore all these files that are created by?
Ignore the files like.
Yeah, like all the directory and the structure that was created by Pattern Lab.
Oh yeah, we have a method like we're not pushing that public. You mean public files? Yeah, we do have, right, Kevin? Like we're not pushing that on our. We're ignoring that. If you need any information, like reach out to us. We can share that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, how
Yeah.
do you avoid loading the server when Pattern starts?
So the
Sorry, I'll find it later.
All right. Thank
Use
you.
Composer, right, to manage that, and then you just exclude like the stuff that Composer installs as part of the repo, right? Is that?
Our repo consists of like one theme. Within our theme, we have a pattern lab folder and templates, everything. And then we have another repo that's like whole like main site, which has a config and everything. Once we push the config on the main site and then the theming on the theme, and then once we are ready, like we git push everything, then we Composer update our theme. That's our workflow.
Can you show us your package.json inside your theme so we can see?
Yeah, right.
oh, inside pattern.
That is it. Here.
Oh, so I'm looking at composer.json.
No, not this one. Oh, this is like theme and different.
You mean theme or in the pattern lab? I'm sorry.
How we set up our.
You mentioned at the outset that there's a Drupal-specific pattern lab instance that you're using, which I assume is a dependency either in your
You mean our Gulp.js file?
package.json. I'm just trying to get a sense of what library you're using.
So actually, I don't think, I checked this yesterday, I don't think we're actually using the Drupal specific one. The only thing that's specific about Drupal in that case is the additional plugins provided. I think we're just using the Twig template or the Twig specific edition.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we've actually added, because the plugins.
Open up your pattern lab vendor folder, you should be able to see that start date something.
Yeah, inside.
See? Where?
It's your starter kit. If you look on the website, there's several different you can pick your Drupal on that is Twig files. So when you set up all the folders, it starts with some of the other ones.
So that's in the pattern lab.
It's on the site, you just download it all.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you considered taking Pattern Lab out of this site specifically so that you can have a Pattern Lab that works for more than one site? Like
That's our goal for the next project. Once we have this one up and running, then our like focus would be on that. That's
Our goal is to try and take it so that we can have anybody who wants to go to the site use our pattern lab. But we're not there yet, and we need to figure out how to scale it.
One more. Yes, sir.
So one thing to keep in mind, we may not be aware of this, the panel version 2, PHP's version is actually being deprecated and no longer supported. So you might want to start taking a look at the Node version 3 that
Okay.
Lovely and Frost are maintaining now. We ran into the same situation, so we switched over to the Node version. So just to FYI.
All right.
Thank
Good to
you.
know. Thank you. All right.
Yep.
Is there ever need to extend using page patterns in the middle racks or
Just for the demo purpose, we did like pays, but we're not including that on a Drupal site.
Also, I don't know if the class is completely full day pattern lab training.
Oh, nice. I took one of your trainings, Chaz. Yeah.
Cool.
That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.